Is Brandon Aiyuk a Steeler yet? What is going on? We're going to talk about the latest on today's edition of the Locked On NFL podcast.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to a Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. I am Tyler Rowland, local expert for the Locked On Titans podcast, here with my co-host Alex Clancy, local expert from Locked On Cardinals. Today's edition of Locked On NFL is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Alex, the Brandon Aiyuk saga continues. It remains a storyline in the 24-hour NFL news cycle. Is he a Pittsburgh Steeler yet? What is going on? We're going to give our thoughts on the Brandon Aiyuk situation. Also, we got real NFL preseason games. I know the Hall of Fame game happened, but the real first week of preseason action starts this weekend. We're going to go over the things we have our eye on. And could the NFL make some changes to the preseason in the future? Alex is going to give us his fantastic theory on what could happen. Before we get into all of it, thank you again for making Locked On NFL your first to listen each and every day, Monday through Friday, NFL content all year round, always for free. You're not going to beat that anywhere else. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. So obviously, if you have been paying attention to the saga, even if you haven't been paying attention to the saga, it's been a wild week in NFL media. We've had some offshore kind of independent accounts reporting certain things. You don't know if you can trust it. Is it real? Are they for sure? Are they legit? You don't know. And then you have some of these reputable names that we're used to hearing from, the Jordan Schultz, the Ian Rappaport, the Adam Schefter, kind of trying to combat some of those reports that are coming out from unknown sources and things like that. But Alex, I got to tell you, my read on all of this stuff when it comes to Brandon Aiyuk, I think that the unknown reporters, Pretty Ricky and guys like that on Twitter, I think that they had this right all along. I think that Brandon Aiyuk is going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. And I think we've talked about this through the summer. To me, Pittsburgh has always made a ton of sense. I know the Commanders have been a team that we talked about. The Patriots and the Browns were apparently involved at different points in the process. What's been your read on what's going on from Brandon Aiyuk? And I guess, what do you think is actually going to happen here?
This doesn't seem very Pittsburgh Steeler-like.
It doesn't.
They underpay everybody. Like, forever, it's been the Patriots. It's the culture. Look at the rings. You come and be part of the
wide
system.
receiver.
Yeah, well, and it for a long time, it's like, for a wide receiver, it's like outside of Antonio Brown, you Hines Ward and Emmanuel Sanders was good there for a while. It's like this hasn't been wide receiver for a long time. So it's like, what is going? It doesn't make sense. Like, so when we talk to go to Washington, they're gonna huck it. You're gonna have an impact there. It's like they're gonna run the ball here,
and the connection with Jaden Daniels.
Like, he thinks that his target share is bad in San Francisco. He's going to be the third option, most likely, outside of Najee Harris and Jalen Warren on this team. And then you have George Pickens, and they drafted Calvin Austin. Like, this isn't. The one thing I don't understand is why Pittsburgh would change their stripes, so to speak, now. That's the one thing that it doesn't really resonate with me after decades and decades of not doing something like this.
Well, I actually have a little bit of a theory on that. I mean, Pittsburgh has been good at finding wide receivers and getting the most out of their wide receiver talent for a lot of time.
In the draft,
Right, exactly. But in recent years, they have not been over the hump. And I think that this move, if they make this move, and I expect them to make this move, like, we hate to talk uncertainties, but I do believe that Brandon Aiyuk will be a Pittsburgh Steeler. I believe the unknown reporters out there, the fake blue check marks or whatever some of these bigger names are calling them. I think that this is a direct result of Mike Tomlin feeling a little bit of heat. He started feeling just a bit of heat last year for not getting over the hump, not winning a playoff game in a long time, all that stuff. And Mike Tomlin is like, you know what? We're not good enough at wide receiver, and we need to do something big about it. So I think the fact that Mike Tomlin hasn't had the playoff success in recent years has driven him to, hey, I got to do something a little out of the box. I got to do something a little bit different. But I agree with you. I don't, I get if you don't want to go to New England. They got Drake May. It's basically a brand new system there with new coach. I know that there's connections, and it's not like they're rebooting it entirely, but I get why you wouldn't want to go to New England. But Cleveland seems like a great spot, and I don't see how, Pittsburgh is significantly in a better position than Cleveland in terms of their roster and their competitiveness and the offensive mind. That's you're going to be more at home in Cleveland than you would be in Pittsburgh based on the offensive system and how they operate there. I trust Kevin Stefanski more than I trust Arthur Smith at this point. And I think Washington would make a ton of sense as well. And these teams are all probably willing to pay him the money that he wants. So it is peculiar to me that he would focus in on Pittsburgh.
Yeah. You know what the best place for him would be? The place he's already at.
San Francisco.
So here's the thing. The reports out of, and you can check out Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker. They do a great job for Locked On 49ers.
Yep.
What I've seen all over Twitter and stuff about this is Deebo Samuel came to camp looking to be the guy. It's like, who cares? He gets hurt every year.
Yeah.
It's like, it doesn't matter. Here's the thing. If I'm Brandon Aiyuk, I'm betting on myself. I'm waiting for better options. And I can walk after next year if they decide to pay Brock Purdy, or if they decide to keep Deebo Samuel or extend George Kittle or do whatever with Trent Williams. They've got a lot of unknowns there, and I understand that he deserves more than what he's making on his current contract.
For sure.
Even if, and knock on wood, you never wish this upon anybody, even if he has an injury in 2024, he's still going to be the number one free agent wide receiver in 2025. Chill. These options are terrible to get traded to. They're awful. Go win a Super Bowl and then talk to people next year when you have a ring or when you make another deep run in the NFC and you lead the team in receiving. Chill the hell out, play on your contract, and go next year or extend next year because they always pay everybody. I don't understand why he wouldn't wait one more year.
When you look at this situation from Brandon Aiyuk and the 49ers perspective, it's a lose-lose deal. Aiyuk is going to go to a worse offense where he'll probably produce less, and the 49ers in their Super Bowl window lose one of their key players. It just really doesn't make any sense from those two parties. I get the team trading for Brandon Aiyuk that wants him. That's going to be a win for them. But for Aiyuk and for the 49ers, the best place to be is where you're at. You know what I mean? I do want to say one thing, Alex. I just have a little theory here on the back and forth. Some of you guys listening to this right now are going to be like, what are you talking about? Because you're not tapped into Twitter like a junkie all the time like I am and blah, blah, blah. But I think that Pretty Ricky and Andrew Filipino or whatever covers the Steelers or is in on this, I think they're 100% right. And I think, Alex, that this delay in the Brandon Aiyuk news, I think this is a coordinated move by the NFL to try to silence or make those unknown reporters, those Twitter reporters, look bad. I think this deal was done multiple days ago. I think that Brandon Aiyuk has been a Steeler for multiple days. I think everybody in the league knows it, but the NFL has asked the parties involved to drag this out a little bit to make it look like those unnamed sources on Twitter are wrong. That's my theory, that this deal is actually done. Pretty Ricky was right, and the NFL has coordinated a move here to make it look like he isn't, just to save face for all of the Adam Schefters and Ian Rappaports and Jordan Schultzes of the world. So that's my theory. But with that being said, we'll take the tinfoil hats off and we'll move to some NFL preseason games. What are we watching for this weekend? We'll dive into that. Before we do want to let you guys know that today's episode of Locked On NFL is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats, they might not have the time or the resources to hire. That's why 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, Alex, let's continue this Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. Talked about the Brandon Aiyuk saga. I'll be honest, we're recording this mid-afternoon on Wednesday. This news could break at any moment. The expectation is that Brandon Aiyuk will be a Pittsburgh Steeler. So that's the expectation. I'm sure that maybe Thursday morning, maybe late Wednesday night, that news could break at any time. But just understand the show has to be recorded at some time. You can't just wait forever. Of course. But anyways, NFL preseason week 1. I know you could call the Hall of Fame game, all of that, whatever you want. I don't buy it. This is preseason week 1, all right? And there are going to be some excellent games for us to watch. And look, it may be preseason football. And this happens every year where we're like, I'm so ready for football. Football's back, blah, blah. And then the preseason game starts and everyone's like, oh, these are terrible. Just enjoy the football. Just enjoy the football. But one of the games that I'm looking at is Patriots against Panthers, okay? Because the Patriots not only have one young quarterback in Drake May, who's exciting, but Joe Milton, the raw talent out of Tennessee, his size, his arm strength, his athletic ability, like I am very excited. I'm very excited to see Drake May and Joe Milton. Even if Bryce Young isn't going to play in the game, he should be playing in the game, in my opinion. I think it's absurd to sit Bryce Young in the preseason opener, but it sounds like that's what the Panthers are going to do. But I'm still excited to watch those two quarterbacks from the New England Patriots.
Yeah, and that's tonight. So enjoy that. There's 2 games tonight, that one and then the Lions and Giants. I think that across the board, we'll see. I mean, some teams have come out and say their quarterbacks are going to start. Some say that they won't play.
Right.
Bears Bills for me. I want to see Caleb Williams. It's going to be, let's see if he's as good as the tape with no pads and no defense on makes him look. I don't like people just gawking over anybody right now who hasn't played in the NFL yet. It's fun. I mean, I know it's for upside. I'm sure Roma Dunze, I'm assuming he'll play a couple series. I'm not exactly sure what they're going to do, if they're going to, button everybody down. That's a brand new look offense. That one for me. And then I'll do one more and then I'll put it back to you. Seahawks and Chargers, 2 new coaches, 2 completely new regimes, 2 what looks to be different trajectories and different styles of play. Seattle, it's like they're going to flip-flop. Like the Chargers are going to run like the Seahawks did, and the Seahawks are going to throw like the Chargers did. And it's going to be very interesting to see what the young players are going to look. The Vidal kid out of San Diego or out of LA is going to be, a dynasty darling in the later rounds this year of dynasty football drafts. But yeah, that's one for me. With new regimes are always fun right out the gate.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And that's why, I hate to do home cooking here, but I'm excited to see what happens with the Tennessee Titans. I mean, I try not to do home cooking on the show, but the reality is Will Levis is an unknown, and he's very polarizing. People either hate him or think he's going to be good. The Titans have a ton of new pieces, a brand new offense. This is the first time in 25 years that the Titans haven't been a ground and pound, old school style of football team. So to see the change in philosophy away from the Derrick Henry Titans to the Brian Callahan Titans, who are going to want to throw the ball and play in 3 wide receiver and all that, I just think that's going to be a shock to the system, not only for Titans fans, but people around the NFL who have come to, know the Titans as the Titans and the way they've been playing for 25 years. So with Will Levis, with all the new pieces on offense, they are going to play some preseason games. That has been a big change from Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel did not play his players in the preseason. The starters would play, 4 plays in the third preseason game and never play. So all of the changes happened in Tennessee. I think that makes it interesting. And outside of home cooking, Chiefs versus Jaguars, according to the Chiefs and the reports coming out of their camp, they're playing Patrick Mahomes in their first team offense a little bit in every preseason game. So while all these other teams are Bryce Young, brand new system, brand new coach, was garbage last year as the first-round pick, tons of new players on his offense, the Panthers are like, oh, no, we're good. We don't need those reps. The two-time defending Super Bowl champs with one of the best players in NFL history are saying, yes, we do need those reps. Maybe someone should pay attention. Maybe someone should notice that. Like, it's absurd to me that people don't play in the preseason. So I'm excited to watch Patrick Mahomes play a little bit in the preseason because the Chiefs need to show the rest of the NFL your players need to play, especially these guys who haven't earned the day off like Bryce Young. Doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, and we'll talk about that in the next segment. I'm going to kind of pose something because, we tend to tell the future on this show. So maybe we'll be right again with that. The last one for me, the Cowboys, anything Cowboys this year is going to be fascinating and not in like it's the America's team. No, shove it. They haven't been relevant in 30 years more than being on TV, making the playoffs, but not winning any games. I want to see how bad their depth is. Because that's what you're going to see in the preseason is the depth. What it's going to look like outside of CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson and Ezekiel Elliott and Dak Prescott. Like, I want to see what the offense is going to look like outside of that. I think that Brandon Cooks still. But the defense, they may be the most top-heavy team that we've seen in quite some time. So I want to see what the rest of the pieces look like around that offense and defense. They play the Rams Sunday afternoon. Tyler, there's one thing, I'm just going to do it now, and we'll pivot and talk about it next segment.
Wait. Oh. 1 second. I just want to throw one more in the hat. One more. It's going to be great. And I missed it, and it was my number one, and I skimmed over it. Raiders-Vikings. Raiders have the QB competition between Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. I'm excited to see what happens there. How do they play those guys? And then J.J. McCarthy on the other side. Our guy Luke Braun over at Locked On Vikings has a running bit where he basically zooms in on every pass from J.J. McCarthy in training camp to point out how bad his throwing motion is or like where his feet go after he throws and stuff like that. I love it. Luke's a very smart guy, very entertaining as well. But can J.J. McCarthy beat out Sam Darnold? Will the worst, ugliest quarterback competition in NFL history between Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, where both players are losers no matter what happens, how will that shake out? I don't know. During preseason, that's something that I'm actually interested in seeing is these quarterbacks. So excited for that. But now tell the people, move on. Sorry.
I can appreciate that. Now, should the NFL extend training camp, remove preseason games altogether, and infuse more inter-team practices? We'll discuss that next as we roll on here. Locked On NFL Thursday. This episode of Locked On NFL Thursday is brought to you by our friends at the Game Time app. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. Okay, makes getting tickets easier and faster, naturally. Prices on the Game Time app go down the closer it gets to first pitch. So say you get off work late, and you're like, hey, man, let's check out what's going on at the ballpark. Maybe able to get cheap seats at favorable spots. Right closer to first pitch. And it's not just baseball, it's comedy shows, it's concerts, it's, NFL when it comes around. And the best part about the Game Time app, in my opinion, is there's no guesswork. Like, say you're like, oh, you know what? I want to go sit in left field at your neighborhood ballpark. And you're like, I've never done that, but Aaron Judge is in town and he may hit a donger and I want to catch him. But I don't know what the seats look like out there. You will with the Game Time app. Before you actually buy the tickets, you can click on the row and section and seat that you want to potentially buy. It shows you the vantage point from that seat, so you know exactly what you'll be looking at if you were to purchase those tickets. So it takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account. Use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms do apply, but download the Game Time app, create an account. Use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, so Tyler put his tinfoil hat on earlier in the show. I'm going to put our thinking hats on here, looking into the future, wondering how to improve upon the NFL product. And Tyler, yesterday, Rondale Moore goes down, former Arizona Cardinal, got traded for Desmond Ridder to the Atlanta Falcons. When you hear aircast and carted off and practice canceled, practice ended, you know that injury is not something that would be for the faint of heart to see. And it begs the question, and I know what you're going to say, and I'll let you say it. Should the NFL figure out a way to better the ramp up to week 1. And for me, Tyler, with all of the players now sitting in the preseason and holding clipboards, earbuds for quarterbacks, etc., is there a world where in a vacuum, because I know the preseason is a massive moneymaker for the NFL,
right,
to where you extend team practices and group team practices with a couple different teams another month instead of doing preseason and maybe sell tickets to that or, whatever it is, amplify that. Would that be a better ramp up to week 1 instead of a bunch of 2s and 3s and practice squad guys playing games that are meaningless?
Well, it depends on who you ask. If you ask those 2s and 3s who are fighting for their life in the NFL, they're going to say those preseason games are more important. If you ask the coaches and the starters, they're probably going to tell you it's not as important. And I think one thing, and you kind of mentioned it right there, is joint practices. Joint practices have gotten so popular in the NFL. I know the team that I cover, the Titans, did 2 a couple of years ago. They're doing multiple ones, or doing one last year, doing another one this year. I think that a lot of coaches have said this, and I'm sure if we pulled all of them, they would agree that the joint practices are often more important than the preseason game, because usually you have the joint practice leading up to the preseason game that week, just to make the logistics easy on all teams. So I think that with joint practices being as popular as they are, the need for preseason games is just not there the way that it used to be. But you talk about the money part of it. So how do we parse that? There's no way that these owners are going to say, well, I don't care what's better for the football team. I care about the business I run and making money. So how can we offset that? What if these joint practices usually go 2-3 days at maximum? What if you held these joint practices in the stadium rather than on the practice field, and you charged money to see these joint practices? They could make it work that way too, and it might even increase the gate take because it's multiple days instead of just one, and you could triple that. So I think that that's something that should happen. But at the end of the day, Alex, I am someone who I was a hardworking guy who didn't have the most talent. I had to out-hustle everybody else because they were bigger and stronger than me and all of that. So I'm always going to side with the little guy on this one, #short kings. And while I agree with your logic is sound, if they just do this in a different way, it might prevent some of these injuries. But I don't know that the injuries can be prevented in a significant way just because of the nature of the sport. And I want these, third string guys, these guys fighting for their lives, I want them to have ample opportunity, because one thing I love about football is it's really the only sport where it's as common for these undrafted free agents and late round guys to turn into something. It just doesn't happen as often in the NBA. I don't know about Major League Baseball as much because I don't follow the sport as much. But, in football, one of the things I love about football is that literally anybody from anywhere can figure it out. And if you take away more opportunity from those guys, we're going to get less of those stories.
Yeah.
So selfishly, I will say that I want things to continue with the preseason. That was kind of my beef about lowering preseason games, going from 3 down to 2, is you're just giving less chances to these guys who need the opportunity. So That's what I have in mind. But what you're saying is probably right.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I get that. And yeah, it's interesting. I like to compare things outside of the sport. Making an NFL roster and making a name for yourself and having a great career is it's like the NHL playoffs version of making a team in a professional setting. It's anything could happen, and things do all the time, So to combat that, and obviously that would be a downside of removing the preseason games. And on top of that, the amount of eyes that would be on these players during the joint practices, during the extended camp, during all these things, in my opinion, would more than compensate for playing against a quarterback who's probably never going to see the field, throwing to players who are probably never going to see the field, to corners intercepting 3 times a ball against a quarterback who's going to be a practice squad player. How does that show an NFL level caliber of talent when you're not playing against bona fide NFL level caliber of talent? So again, it's inexact. Of course, it's never going to happen because the NFL makes way too much money with preseason games, with TV and network deals and all that stuff. But I think that it's a lot closer with actual impact on a team and formulating a team and running offenses and new defenses and all that stuff with joint practices. Because listen, there's a lot more heated stuff that goes on in real practices. That means a lot more to these players, obviously, with these joint practices than a preseason game where they're sitting on the field laughing without their helmet on. It's just it's a different thing. It's a little bit more carnal and a little bit more like, I don't know, without the pads, it feels like it means more.
Yeah. No, I just had one thought just coming to my mind.
Yeah.
This conversation can be tied into my general theory that the NFL needs to find a way to blend the spring football leagues with this. Imagine if instead of having, a preseason game like normal, you could have the joint practice and then have one of these summer league football, XFL, UFL now that they call it. Imagine if instead of having a preseason game that weekend, it was a UFL game. And like in the NBA, every NBA team has a G League team that's connected to them directly. What if, you took your bottom 30 players from your 90-man roster and they got to play with the UFL team that you owned that weekend? You know what I mean? And then you could focus more on the joint practices, care less about the preseason games, and also get that preseason revenue and those preseason eyes, and those third-string players still get the opportunity to prove it. And if they don't make the team, well, they've already played with the UFL team, and they could just slide down there and get signed by them and still keep their football journey going, and then you could still promote that player if you like what you see. You know what I mean? I think more integration with the quote-unquote JV league could help this situation out a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I mean, in a perfect world, every team would have a G League, would have a UFL team. I mean, ideally, obviously it wouldn't be 53-man rosters and all that stuff. Like there's only so many human beings who could play football
who are capable.
Planet. So, I mean,
I'll play, Alex. I'll play.
Yeah, really. Like, I'm going to be the long snapper. Like, you've got, 1,500 more people who have played at NFL level. Like, it doesn't necessarily compute. And I think the only snag to that, and I love the idea, I think the only snag to that is the UFL is going to have to relinquish control, and they won't do that.
Right. That's more chefs in the kitchen.
Yeah, that's the rage against the machine portion of the UFL where they're not going to be they're never going to be successful in the NFL anyways. But like, they're not going to be like, okay, we're gonna cohabitate together, and you're going to be calling up my players, and you're not going to be it's just weird because the offseason, those people have normal jobs, I would assume. Like, that's the clunkiness of it. But I think on paper, it sounds obviously fantastic. So I don't know. I mean, the preseason, it's never going to go away, but I feel like there are better ways to do it to get the most out of it for the actual regular season than just the pomp and circumstance of playing a game that's timed in front of people.
Well, changes are coming. The NFL wants the 18-game schedule, and one of the easy ways to appease the players with that is to lower the preseason game again to only 2 games. So changes are coming, and if the NFL, maybe they split it. You do get the 2 preseason games, but then they have 2 UFL games or whatever the first 2 weeks, something like that. There's going to be changes, so I don't think anything's off the table. But with that being said, that is going to do it for this Thursday edition of Locked On NFL. Again, waiting on the Brandon Aiyuk news. Something's going to happen soon. Who's right, who's wrong? We're going to see it all play out, but that's going to do it for us today. I'm one of your hosts, Tyler Rowland, here with my co-host, Alex Clancy. As I tell you guys every week, start your weekend early and stay safe out there.